Relations, functions, and graphs. Here we have a pretty long question, so we're going to dive right into it. Part A tells us, given f of x is equal to this function here, right, negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 8. So wherever we see x, we substitute it into this function, and we get our f of x function, or in this case, f of negative 2, we get our answer here. I might say f of x, or I might say y. So if x is negative 2, I might say y is a specific number when I insert negative 2 in this function. All right, so let's jump right into it. So we have when x is negative 2, we have f of negative 2 is equal to all right, input that in your calculator, or you can work it out mentally. Supposed to get negative 4. All right, so when x is negative 2, y is equal to negative 4. When x is equal to 1, f of 1 input this into the calculator, you get 8. All right, and lastly, when x is equal to 3, f of 3 you input this into your calculator, and here you'll get negative 4. All right, so when x is equal to negative 2, f of negative 2 is negative 4. When x equals to 1, you can say y is equal to 8. When x is equal to 3, y is equal to negative 4 again. So when x is negative 2, let me zoom this here. When x is negative 2, f of negative 2 is negative 4. So here I will put negative 4. All right. When x is equal to 1, f of 1 is equal to 8. So I'll put 8 right here. And lastly, when x is equal to 3, f of 3, is equal to negative 4. I'm going to put negative 4 right there. So we copied and complete the table. Remember, you have to show all your workings. Part 2 asks us to list the members of the domain. The members of the domain are the x values, right? So what numbers you input into the functions, that is the members of domain, members or elements. So to list, we have to have open curly brackets. We list our x values and we have commas in between them. Right. Now we have to list the members of the range. So the members of the range is our y values. All right. So we're going to do that, open curly brackets, and we are going to put our y values. Now we have to list the set of ordered pairs, right? So we have to remember ordered pair consists of first coordinate x, second coordinate y, right? So we put our open curly bracket. Let me write our brackets a little better than that. Open bracket, we put in negative 2, negative 4, x and y. Right? Remember, ordered pair looks like this. Right? We must have our curved bracket, the x value, comma, y value, closed curved brackets. Must have that. Comma, then we have negative 1, 4. We have 0, 8. We have 1, 8. 2, 4. And we have 3, negative 4. Close curly brackets. All right, so that's the ordered pair right here. Now we have to draw an arrow diagram. So I'll put that up here. Gets a little space. So for an arrow diagram, Draw two balloons. We have x, we have f of x, right? So remember, -2 to 3, -2, right? -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now we have -4, 4, 8, 8. -4, 4, 8, 8, 4, -4, 4, -4, right? And then we draw arrows, right? We draw arrows, -2 to -4, and so on. So this simply means when you input -2 into the function, you get -4, right? So the arrow indicating, okay, if you input -2 into the function, the result is -4. If you input -1, the result is 4. If you input 0, the result is 8, so on. All right, so that's the arrow diagram. Part 6 says, using 2 centimeters, using a scale, so we deal with a scale. So using a scale of 2 centimeters to represent 1 unit on the x-axis and 1 centimeter to represent 1 unit on the y. So let's deal with that. So if we look at this grid, let's deal with the x first. 2 centimeters to represent 1 unit. So it means we have 1, 2 centimeters, this is 1. 1, 2, this is 2. 1, 2, this is 3. 1, 2, this is 4, so on, right? Now this is a 0, so you have to start again. 1, 2, this is -1. 1, 2, -2, 1, 2, -3, so on. Now you see the 0.5, you don't have to write 0.5, you just have to write 1, 2, 3 going on, and -1, -2, -3 going on, all right? And one other thing you should note is this. Seeing that the x is between -2 and 3, make sure when you're drawing a graph, your x axis has -2 and 3, all right? So if we look at our x-axis, right, this is our negative x-axis, we label them. This is our positive x-axis. This is positive y-axis, and this is our negative y-axis, right? Now, we have -2, nice, and we have 3. So we have those numbers, we have that specification here. Now let's look at the y. 1 centimeter to represent 1 unit. 1 centimeter to represent 1 unit, that's easy, right? So here we have 1 centimeter, because each box represents a centimeter. So we represent 1. Our next box, 2, 1, 1 box, 3, 1, 4. Remember before we had 2 centimeters, so 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. We had to count 2 before we say 1, 2, and 3. This is pretty straightforward. We have 1, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, so on for the positive y. And similarly, locate your 0 first. Then we say, okay, 1, -1, right? -2, right? -3. So each one represents a negative number. So -1, -2, -3, -4, so on. Right. Now, looking back here, the biggest y number, because f of x is like saying y, the biggest y number is 8. And the smallest y number is -4. So make sure on your y-axis you have +8, and as the largest number. We could have more than that, but make sure 8 exists, and you have -4. So here we see, okay, we have 8, all right? I mean, you could go up to 10 if you want. It doesn't matter. You don't have to stop at 8, but you can go up a little bit. And below here, we have -4. So we have our x, we have our highest number, and we have our lowest number, right? So what we're going to do now, we are going to plot, right? We're going to plot. So in order to plot, we have to look at the ordered pair. We could look at the ordered pair, we could look at the table, it doesn't matter, right? So if we look at the table, we have x is -2, y is -4. So we look for the x value first, and then we look for the y value. So -2, -4. So -2 on the x is here, right? -2 on the x is here. So we either going up or down. We either go up or down on this -2 line. So -2, -4. So we have to go down. So -2, -4, we're going down to here. So we have this point. I tell students, follow circle. This is -2, -4. Those are -2, and we're going across somehow, and we end up here, right? That's wrong, all right? We staying on this line, -2, -4, we right here. Nice. Next ordered pair. Let's zoom it in a little bit. We have -1, 4, -1, 4. All right. So -1. This time we're going up to 4. So -1, we're going up to 4. That's a point right there. All right, that's a point right here. We have 0, 8, 0, 8. So 0, we look for our 0 first. Always look for the x first. 0, and then we're going up until we reach 8. So 0, 8 is right here. Continuing. We're looking for 1, 8 this time. So x is 1, y is 8. So 1, we're looking for 1, right? And 8. So we're going up to here. So 1, 8 is right here. All right. Continuing. We have 2, 4. 2, 4. So we're looking for 2. Right. 2 is here. And then we're going up till we reach 4. So 4 is there. So 2, 4. Nice. And then we have 3, -4. 3, -4. So 3, -4. 3 here. And so, okay, once we find out 3, we gotta go up or down on this line. -4 is going down. So 3, -4 is right here. Right? Once you do that, then you have to draw a smooth line, right? So you can't, you're not supposed to use ruler. You're not supposed to use your ruler. You draw a straight line. You draw a curve, a smooth curve. So we start from here and we draw a curve. All right, so let me do that right now. Take your time. Erase that a little bit and do it over. All right, sometimes you need to erase to make sure it's through the point as best as possible. All right. All right. Continue following it. Nice, so there's a curve, you label it f of x. All right, so this here is your curve. All right, that is your curve right there. Now, continuing. So we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They said, using the graph above, right, solve the equation f of x equals 0. Also state the maximum or minimum coordinate, right? So when f of x is equal to 0, so we want to solve when f of x equals to 0. So that simply means when this curve cuts the x-axis, right? when the curve cuts the x-axis, f of x is equal to 0. And remember I said y is equal to 0. So the curve cuts the x-axis. I'm going to say here. And also I'm going to say right here. Nice. So my x1 is equal to negative 1.5. And my x2 is equal to 2.5. Right. So that's my answer. Right. So on somebody else's graph, they might have something else like negative 1.6 or negative 1.7, or they might have 2.4 or 2.6. So you will still get it correct based on your graph, right? Based on your graph. I mean, if your graph bellying out all here, I mean, draw your graph a little better, right? So this is my answer. X1 is negative 1.5 and X2 is 2.5. Now remember, this x1 and x2 simply means the first x that I located is negative 1.5 and the second x is 2.5, right? So somebody put x2 is negative 1.5 and x1 is 2.5, correct, all right? They also state the maximum or minimum coordinate. Now, since the coefficient of x squared is negative, it's a maximum graph. So we know we will say maximum point, and then you look on the graph to see what it is. The maximum point here is right here. This is the maximum point. So the graph is going up, going up, going up, going up until it reaches the highest point, all right? And then it starts to go down, all right? So it reaches the maximum point at the dot, and then it starts to go down, all right? So we have to read off the maximum point, and the maximum point consists of x and y. So we need a coordinate or an ordered pair, all right? So if we look at this, here is 7, right? Here is 7.2, 7.4, 7.6, 7.8, 8. So it means every stroke, if I zoom in, it means that every stroke represents 2. So if here's 7.0, 7.2, 7.4, 7.6, 7.8, 8, right? It simply means that this here, 8.0, in the middle is 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6. Here, the middle here is 8.7. So this middle right here is 8.7. Right, this is 8.7. Now, what is the x? The x is 0.5. Remember coordinate, you have the x first, right? You have the x first and the y after. So that is the point or the coordinate that you want to get. So x is 0.5, right? So if I zoom in here, x is 0.5 and the y value is 8.7. All right, so the maximum point is 0.5, 8.7. Another thing to note is this 0.5, I'll just make mention of this. When you're going up to the maximum point and then you're going down to the next point, you realize that this here represents the line of symmetry. So when you're drawing a graph, you have to try to show, okay, you're going up to the maximum point and then you're going back down. All right, so you need to try to show that. So when you're connecting these 2 points here, you're going up to the maximum point and then you're going down. All right, so you have to try to show that when you're drawing your graph. And this line, as I said, this line here This line here represents the axis of symmetry. All right. The question didn't ask you to do that. The question didn't ask you to do that. This here is x is equal to 0.5. It means that this point here is 0.51, 0.52. All the x values will be 0.5, 0.53, 0.54, 0.55. See 0.5, 8.7, which is the maximum point. All right. So when you're drawing your graph, you have to make sure, right, that it goes up here and comes down. Between these 2 points is the middle line, right? The mirror line, right? Between those 2 points is the mirror line, right? So therefore you have to try to draw a graph. Try to draw a graph as best as possible to depict the maximum point. All right. Let me just take off that. So I can write that across here. Maximum point is 0.5, 8.7, according to my graph. All right, according to my graph. They said here what? On the same, well, using the same scale, plot on the same graphs. On the same graph, plot f of x equals 3. All right, plot f of x equals 3. All right, so we want to know, basically, we want to say, okay, plot y equals 3. Remember I said f of x is equal to y, so you have to plot that. So let's deal with that now. Now, I don't have a ruler here, so I'm going to see how best I can do this. F of x equals 3 or y equals 3 is simply a straight line going across, and I'll tell you why just now. All right, so just straight line. All right. This line here is y is equal to 3. And that simply means this point here is -3 going up to 3, -3, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5, 3. All the y values on this line is equal to 3. So that is why this line is y is equal to 3. All right. And the question asked us, using the same scale, okay, plot this y is equal to 3. We did that. Hence means you have to use part C to figure out part D. So from the graph, we're going to determine what is the actual x values from when the curve and the straight line intersects, right? Because we have this here represents the curve, this 3 represents the straight line. So let's look at that. Where the curve and the line intersects is at this point here and at this point here, right? That's where the curve and the line intersects. Right, let me just draw another circle. So what we have to do is from this point, you go straight down and we read off what answer we got. So from here, we go straight down. And this is our first answer, which is negative. This is, I can call it x3, is negative 1.2. Right? Let me make sure. No, this is negative 1.1. Negative 1.1, because if you look at this here, we have, if we have 1, this is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. So each one is 1. Each line here is 1. So if we have this point negative 0.5, negative 0.6, negative 0.7, negative 0.8, negative 0.9, negative 1, negative 1.1. Right, so we have this x3. And if we look at this one here, right, so I'm going just to take my line from this point and draw it straight down here, right? This is 2.1, 2.2. So x4 is 2.2. Right, so x4 and x3. Where I get x1, x3 from? Because I had x1, x2. So I say, let me just say x3, x4, all right? So x3 is negative 1.1 and x4 is 2.2. So x3 is negative 1.1 and x4 is 2.2. So that's it in detail. When you're drawing your graph, make sure you have your axes labeled. All right, you have your y-axis, negative y-axis, negative x, positive x. Make sure your graph is labeled. We have f of x is negative 2x squared. It's supposed to have a 2 here. All right, so it's be f of x is negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 8. So make sure your graph is labeled. Let me just deal with that one time. All right, so make sure your graph is labeled correctly. So this curve, this is a curve here, the straight line, this is a straight line here. The points of intersection, right, x3, x4, right? When f of x equals 0, x1, x2, all right, we have our maximum here. So we see we have everything. You could also put the scale, all right? The scale is 2 centimeters is equal to 1 unit on x-axis and 1 cm is equal to 1 unit on y-axis. All right, so if you want to be very thorough, you put the scale as well. Everything seems to be in check. Okay. So that's it for relations, functions, and graphs.